Lanier, Griggs,
Here.
Blackman, Paredes,
Here.
Leedstra,
Here.
Horace.
Here, and a quorum is present. Did David hear you, Courtney?
I did not hear a response.
Michelle,
Oh.
he was giving thumbs up because he can't, he's driving and
Okay. Yes, multitasking, please. Eyes on the road, David.
Both hands.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon to continue our conversation about all things 161 reopening in the fall. The first item on the agenda are our questions from the community. And so Dana, maybe we can do that and then go straight into your report, because my guess is that your report also covers a lot of questions that I think families have been asking. So if you can go ahead and go into that. I know we did get several, and I know you're also still planning to do this week's Q&A that will go out to everyone, especially those whose questions we are not able to get to today. I just want to continue to say that we are receiving all of those questions, and all of those questions will have responses to them, even if we are not able to get to them on today's call. But I know that many parents are using this call to help inform their decision that they will make before the day is out. So hopefully we can get to as many of those questions as possible. So Dr. Smith?
Yeah, absolutely. What we'll do is, like always, we'll post the board comments that we received publicly, and we'll respond to those in our documents. Frankly, there are a lot of really good questions that are really zeroing in on just specific program issues that we have to work out now that we know that we're offering both a remote program and a hybrid program. So there's questions about, changing classes at Parker with the hybrid model, or, questions about, the curriculum on the fully remote. So a lot of those questions will come this week. We not only have a transition planning team meeting tomorrow, but our administrative team is dedicating basically all of Wednesday and Thursday to focusing on the specifics of the reopening, meaning what does arrival look like at Flossmoor Hills? What does lunchtime look at Serena Hills, et cetera? So we know that we are going back to our weekly board meetings now that we're really approaching the start of school. And so when we come back next Monday, we will have a lot more specific examples of things that we can share about both the hybrid and the remote plans, just like we included, a sample schedule. Again, that's truly just a sample, but now that we have student numbers rolling in, we have staff numbers rolling in, we can begin placing those students and really work up some of those daily experiences and see how they're going to look, but also make sure that they're going to work within our safety requirements. So when we meet next week, obviously we'll share the comments that we received, but these, along with the ones that we've received in the past, we'll go back through, make sure we don't have any outstanding questions, and bring that information back to the board. But if I can continue, I mean, we do have, I know the superintendent's report is really kind of tied into all of this work. We're really focusing all of our time on construction and on our reopening plans. As I spoke with Fran today, she let me know that we have about half of the unit vents installed already. So we are still a bit ahead of schedule, and we're hoping to stay that way all the way through the completion of our HVAC projects. And we know that we'll have an update a little bit later on in our board meeting. But primarily getting ready for the start of school. We have our administrative retreat days this week, again, focused solely on reopening and what that's going to look like in the buildings, and the specific actions, plans, programs that we'll have to have in place to make sure that it's successful. So between the weekly meetings and preparing for the start of school, and obviously wrapping up the construction, that is commanding all of our time. It's engaging, it's exciting, it's complex work, but it really keeps us focused. that's the end of my official superintendent's report, but I have obviously additional information to share on our committees as well.
Are there any questions or comments about the superintendent's report?
Kind of. I don't know if you want to squeeze this into there. When you said that people are, or your teams are meeting to go back, I just want, looking ahead towards our fifth grade students who are transitioning to sixth. How are we helping them in this moment for those who are choosing to go back in person? I don't know, you can answer that now or say maybe later or email me, but that thought crossed my mind.
Yeah, I think not only 5th to 6th, but also our incoming kindergartners as well. So by Monday, we'll have a definite plan for both of those. Obviously, we'll have to be remote and do things differently than we have in the past. Obviously, we can't have the, 6th grade orientation like we have had in the past that would get kids in the building and give some of them an opportunity. But obviously, if we're doing a hybrid model, there's a different opportunity there with the decrease in kids. And so I think as we're seeing the numbers shake out, we actually may be able to do more in person than we maybe initially anticipated because our student numbers will be so low. And so, it's a lot different to try to schedule, 400 or 450 children physically into Parker on a rotating schedule, even walk that down more. Say it's 125 6th graders. That's a big difference than 250. So I think as the numbers continue to shake out and we know exactly what we're looking at with the hybrid versus remote, I think we'll have some different opportunities to bring those kids in person, at least to get their feet wet in the building, see some new procedures and kind of address it that way.
Awesome. Thank you. I look forward to hearing about that. But can we also keep in mind for future when we can always look for the light at the end of the tunnel whenever that decides to be. And we're introducing the other kids back into the building that haven't been, that we keep them in mind too, to maybe get them in on a weekend before they would return to the building for the first time, maybe.
Yeah, we'll absolutely need a transition for them. I mean, obviously, those kids who are home remotely, when they do come back, I wouldn't expect that we would go back to whatever normal was. And so we'll have to figure out what those new procedures are and make sure that the new kids coming back understand that and that we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So I think we can certainly talk about this when we jump into the draft of the plan later in the meeting. I think that there are a lot of logistical things that the plan points to and that I know, Dana, you and your team are still working on, right? It's real-time work I know people are engaged in to make sure we are ready. But I think it would also be helpful, though, in thinking about the questions that came to us that are sort of the deciding factor for many parents who are still on the fence. So I think there are logistical things that parents can wrap their heads around once we have more clarity on that. But I think that a couple of the big ticket items are just more clarity around curriculum, because what I know I have been hearing is that parents feel like there are two different sets of curriculum and all first graders won't be learning the same thing. So I think clarification on that will be very helpful. And then I think it's really important to point out that all of our families who have students that have special needs and IEPs, like that, I know you all are working very hard to ensure that our students receive the services that they need, whether it is remote or it's in person. I just want to make sure those parents know that their needs are being discussed as we speak to make sure they're a part of our district. So
absolutely. Yeah, well, we have more to share on that, certainly.
Okay, great. So as I know, let's see how many parents we have.
With the
170-ish, and I see that it's growing, but I just want to make sure parents feel like they have enough information to make an informed decision, you know, once they have to do that before this day is over.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we will move to the next item on the agenda. Do we have which is the Equity and Inclusion Committee report? I guess we
Yeah.
haven't talked about it since the dinners.
No, we really didn't talk about it since the dinner, but we did have our virtual diversity dinner, which was awesome. We had about 20 people, and read an article about speaking with children about racism, and it was a really nice conversation, just to broach that subject, but also really got into, okay, what does that mean for our district? What does that mean for your homes, you personally, in the next month, in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months? And so really again, I think what really kind of brightened my eye about the whole situation was the honesty of the conversations and the focus on, okay, what now, right? We didn't spend an hour plus just admiring a problem. I thought there was really good conversation. So what we'll do is we'll get our Equity and Inclusion Committee back together here. We'll want to debrief the information from the previous diversity dinner. We have another one coming up. I believe it's in November. I can't recall the exact date, but I believe it's in November. We'll want to start planning for that, but also a few of the other activities that will get done. So we'll put out some information probably in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, we're in a peculiar time crunch because as we get closer to the start of school, that time whirlwind really kind of takes off. So we'll take a look at the calendars to find out when we want to plan that next committee meeting. But really, we don't want to let that work slow down because I think it was a great event. A little bit smaller, but really good ideas and really excitement for action to move forward. So we'll want to make sure that we capitalize on that in the next month or so and get our team back together and then set our next, steps for the equity and inclusion work for this year.
Okay. Any questions or comments or feedback from those board members who attended the dinner? No pressure.
Hey, I've got a question. I've got a question. And give me like 30 seconds because I actually wrote this down. I'll make sure I captured the thought. But all right, I can't find it. So anyway, I'll just ask it. So Dana, one of the things that I guess I'm wondering, wanting to hear about is the overarching, like, what are we trying to do or what are we trying to get accomplished with the equity and inclusion from a district-wide perspective? Because we talked about race at the dinner, part of the thing I guess I'm getting at is, do we know what we're trying to do with these meetings? Are we trying to, for example, have the teachers get trained more in hopes that we're able to impact the student population for the future? Are we trying to work more with the parents to have the parents hopefully change an environment and bring about a different change in how students interact with each other? What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And really we spent a good chunk of our time focused on that. What does this diversity dinner conversation look like when it's translated into action? And really, I think a lot of our work really pointed to, as we get our group back together at our coming meetings, we know that we're focused on an equity audit for the district, but also what foundation do we want to use? Is there, whether it's whether it's courageous conversations or some other program to keep the effective work happening in our district, to keep our self-reflection happening, but also give us a vehicle to have tough conversations with each other and also with our students to help them grow. And I think really the main focus was, how do we start with the teachers? And so what we'll see at the next E&I meeting will be a focus on different programs, different ways that we can address this. We talked about bias specifically, or privilege. There's a number of different topics. The question is, how do we want to break those up? How do we want to start those conversations with with the adults before we move them to the kids, because we want to make sure that everyone is prepared to handle that.
And my last question is, did we gather any feedback from the participants or survey them to find out what they thought of maybe a possible solution to some of the things that were brought out, so that we could, again, I guess what I'm also trying to find out is how we can measure success in moving our district forward after we establish whatever that is that we're trying to accomplish. And again, and I can't say this loud enough, I'm hoping that this is not just, the teachers getting trained, because I think that the teachers in general really do try to be as equitable as possible. And so I don't want them to just kind of sit up and have, a video and go through a training session and say, okay, well, we've checked that box, but more, how do we go ahead and get to parents, to get engaged with us so that we're all on one accord. Yeah.
I have a quick interjection here. And David, I absolutely agree with what you say. That is important. And I guess I would kind of ask or suggest is to which point and how often do we send out just a quick survey to find out from participants and parents and community members and kids in our district, alumni, whatever group we want to tap into, which I think the wider the better. What does equity and inclusion mean? Because I think that a lot of the issues that are going to dovetail into what David is asking about have to do with common understanding of vocabulary. And, just the word equity, is a word that, in education, that there's a difference between equity and equality. Outside of that and outside of the use in education, I don't know that people know that. So I think it might be helpful in establishing those ends and looking at, well, what does success look like? We should have a very clear understanding of what people actually think these terms mean and what's involved with this. That's, you can run with that or work with that, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I think the other piece of what you just said is that sometimes it's difficult to measure. Well, sometimes it's difficult to measure what success is and looks like when you're doing work in that particular space, in diversity, equity, and inclusion space. So I have no problems whatsoever getting the committee and the district, more importantly, to the point where they can clearly articulate what those three things mean from a district's perspective. But we just have to be very clear on what it is that we are measuring and how we are defining success. Because, for some, just being able to have a conversation with community members about the issues of race and racism is success, right? That's progress. So we just have to be really clear. It's been a little bit of time, I think, thinking about what that looks like from a district's perspective and how does that support our overall strategic goals. So I just don't want us to promise something or assume that there are things that we can measure that are not necessarily quantitatively measured very easily.
Right.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I think this is certainly a qualitative thing, and from my perspective, I think that this is there are things that are observable that you, of course, will have to digest and figure out what it indicates. And for this reason, I think that also looking at the you know, constantly, what do other people in the community
To
think? I mean, what just even in concepts and ideas
share the,
important. Especially, I mean, I have conversations with various people, including
they were supposed to
community members, families, friends, and or random strangers who sometimes, you know, say things that I don't think we're on the same page, even though we may be using the same language. And I think that if we're going to be purposeful in what we're doing, and I think it's good work, and I think it should be purposeful or intentional, that we're always aware, at least, of this disconnect or the disparity. And not to throw my brother into the bus, I love my brother; he's a very bright man. Recently, I had a conversation about some issue in the news, and I realized by the end of a long stream of texts he sent me that we are not on the same page with some basic concepts that I really assumed I thought we were. And I realized, okay, this is a longer conversation than I had intended, or there's going to be a lot of bridge building here on this one. But and I think that for our good work we're doing, and I repeat, I think it is very essential and good work, that we have to keep monitoring. Okay, that's how they thought a month ago, or a quarter ago, or a year ago. What are people saying now? How are they describing these ideas of what we want to head toward as on a qualitative level? And it doesn't have to be quantitative at all. I mean, it's just purely what people's thoughts are, kind of like a relationship that you build. That's it.
If I could add something that maybe would clear things up for David, this is the second dinner I attended, and I thought it was a really good foundation that Dana had set up to lay for the work we have ahead. I think we have to start where he said, with the teachers, and lay that foundation to help the teachers to provide a stable environment for our students to then be invited in to also have those conversations with their peers and potentially with their parents too. So I think this is just the beginning, and like Steve said, and even Michelle, it's definitely a qualitative analysis. We're never going to get anything quantitative out of this. I think it was a refreshing conversation that I got to have, and I was enlightened by a lot of what I heard. And so I thought it was amazing, and I think we're on the right direction. So kudos to the committee, that all the work they've done and that are putting forth the effort.
So Michelle, I also attended, and I think success does look like progress. And I attended the first one as well. And I was in a group with teachers that my children had, and some teachers that I didn't know very well, but I got to learn a lot about them. And so there was also high levels of safety and transparency. And I really appreciated that opportunity. I hope that more community members, parents attend the next one, because I do think this is our opportunity to practice and model this with one another and really understand the idea that we are a team. So it's the community and the teachers together, and it's not just what we're trying to do for one group or the other.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback. Thank you. I think in the effort to make sure going forward we can clearly articulate, at least from a district's perspective, what our definitions are for many of these terms. I think the other piece, and you alluded to this a little bit, Carolyn, is our students and our kids are at the center of all of this. And so every single thing that we are doing in the Community Engagement Committee, in the Equity and Inclusion Committee, and even the Finance Committee, it all has to have a direct line to how it impacts our students, and how the work and the conversations that we have out of the Equity and Inclusion Committee impacts both our teachers and our students in a positive way, right? And so if the goal is to give teachers more tools to use to be able to have meaningful conversations around current events in a way that helps to empower students and helps students have a voice about what's going on in the world, then, you know, kudos. If it is if it's another set of tools that helps students be more open in accepting of all people from everywhere, regardless of what your differences are, I mean, kudos to that too. But I think it will be very important that we are clear on what it is that we hope to get out of this. And then, you know, we can figure out how to measure it qualitatively, but yeah, but it has to point back to our students and how is this committee helping our parents and helping our teachers to better help our students. So, okay. And I was there too. It was great. It was a great intro conversation to race and racism. It wasn't designed to be, it was designed to be a 101, you know, not an advanced level class. And I think that you need to have those type of intro conversations so that people get comfortable. Many people who who participate in conversations like this oftentimes have never done anything like this before. So how do you create a safe space for even our teachers and our parents to be able to have these conversations? So that was the goal, I think, that was one of the goals, I think, for those sets of dinners. And so I think it sounds like that goal was probably met. So, I mean, I did get some good feedback.
Yeah, it was a nice night, certainly a nice event. And we'll come back with another one as well and build off of the work from our previous.
Okay, so we are going to move to a number of action items. The first one are the bills. The bills for the month of July were reviewed by Ms. Misha Blackman. Take it away.
So yeah, I looked at the bills. They are the same as they are usually. Well, plus or minus some things because of COVID, but in any event, may I have a motion to approve the bills for the month of July in the amount of $3,531,513.03.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
I just want to clarify though, Ms. Blackman was the one who made the movement and then Mr. Paredes seconded it, correct?
Yes, I made them. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Griggs,
Yes?
Paredes,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the 2020-2021 Consolidated District Plan?
So moved?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Paredes,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes?
Blackman,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. Can I please have a motion to approve payroll for the month of June in the amount of $3,393,673.30?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes?
Paredes,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. May I please have a motion to approve the FOIA request as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes?
Lanier,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. Can I please have a motion to approve the personnel report 21-001 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I just have one question. I just want to clarify. When I pulled up all of the documents, it looked like it was the same document that was posted 3 times. I just want to make sure there isn't something else that we should be looking at.
No, those are duplicates. Courtney pulled those up.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Lanier,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Fleetstra,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman, Blackman,
We lost her?
No.
She's
She's there. She's unmuted.
her video looks a little choppy.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, she may have been booted already, but it just hasn't
Okay.
kicked her out.
Paredes,
Oh, she's
Can you
saying.
hear me?
You
Yes.
just said
yes,
yes.
Blackman,
Are you waiting for me?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
Got it.
Paredes,
Yes.
Horace,
Yes, and the motion has passed. Can I please have a motion to approve the revised policies 2.125, 2.160, 560, 5.300, 5.310, and 5.330?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Fleetstra,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Horace,
Yes, and the motion has passed. Can I please have a motion to approve revised policies 2.260, 5.10, 5.20, and 7.180?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Griggs,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Fleetstra,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. We will now move, that's the end of our action items. We'll move to several discussion items that we have. Some might take a little bit longer than the others. The first one is construction update.
And Labella. Fran, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
There you go.
Okay. So construction is actually going pretty well. We have almost half of the unit ventilators have been arriving, which is kind of good because they were only supposed to ship last Friday, so they've actually been coming piecemeal. They are not all installed yet, but we're working on it. So we're hoping that we'll have, well, they're coming in pieces and they're getting in. We're hoping that they've all shipped at this point. But as they come in, we're putting them in. The steam labs are pretty well done, except for some punch list items. And of course, we're still waiting on furniture, but the construction itself is almost completely through. So yeah, you got some pictures. We do have the chillers that were received. I believe you saw those pictures, some of those pictures of the crane putting the chillers on the roof last week's board meeting, but both Western Avenue and Flossmoor Hills, they are on the roofs. We are making some headway with ComEd to get that upgrade done at Flossmoor Hills, although that's not completed quite yet, but we're still working with ComEd. I'm going to ask so we have Matt from Wold with us today, and Scotty is also here with us. Do you guys have anything to add? I think those are the big items. We do have some change orders, but they're both positive and negative. We've got a 10% contingency on this project, which means close to $350,000. And we're only touching so far like $45,000 of it. So we are doing incredibly well when it comes to change orders and things that are added and deleted from the project.
Anything else to add?
I have a question. This, I don't know if this has been addressed, but just for the sake of asking, with the new air conditioning in the rooms at Western, and are we, is this all the rooms at Western?
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead, Scott.
Steve, is your question, are all the rooms air conditioned? Is that your question?
Yes, all the rooms where students will be and staff would be working, are all those rooms air conditioned at this point?
At this point right now, no.
Or, I'm sorry, at the end of this project in the summer?
Correct, at Western and Flossmoor Hills.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there any, actually, let me follow up. Is there any more rooms where students are learning that do not have air conditioning in our district? Or is this it, after this project?
After this project, all of our facilities will be 100% air conditioned.
Okay. And the air it's moving from the outside to the inside and then back outside again? As opposed to just circulating within the room?
Yes, well, it will do both. Our outside air dampers will completely close, let's say in the mornings when we need to cool down the rooms quickly or when we need to heat up the rooms quickly, and then they will throttle all day long at about a minimum of 10 to 20% outside air, which will, yes, like you say, circulate that air 5, 6, 7 times an hour.
Okay. All right, great. Awesome. Thank you.
I think that if we were all together, Dana, like this is cause for like all of us standing up and clapping right now.
Right, celebration.
The fact that when this is over, all of our buildings will have central air is, I don't think, I mean, I've been in the district for a really long time and I don't know how long we've been talking about, you know, central air at Western Avenue, for example. So that's exciting.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
nice to have these last two buildings done. Mhm.
so just to, am I still on?
You are.
Just to add to that, when I joined the district about 6 years ago, Serena Hills was the only building that was completely air conditioned.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I can remember board meetings long before I got on the board that talked about central air in the building. So this deserves a picture of Scott this time.
That's right. That's right.
Scott's usually taking the pictures of us. So yes, do a selfie. Okay, great. Anything else on the construction update, Fran?
No, the only other thing, we're working on getting some existing floor tiles, trying to get them to match. You remember we had a piece outside of the library where the floor was buckled some, so we replaced it. We repaired it. We're having some problems getting some floor tiles to match, but since we've done some pretty wild colors in the library area, we're thinking that gives us an opportunity to get a little crazier with the floor tile. So I'm not sure that we've come up with a complete solution yet, but it's not something that I'm really very concerned about.
Hey, I have one question, and I think this might be directed more at Scott. Scott, and I think Steve was trying to get at this question, but I'll try to be more direct about it. With what we've done with the air conditioning and how the air is either brought in, recirculated, or whether it's outdoor to indoor, however you want to look at it, which scenario, can you tell us anything about how this may have any impact on the current COVID-19 and whether it will be of assistance or none or whatever?
Well, first of all, obviously having air-conditioned classrooms at Western and Flossmoor Hills will be beneficial, of course. Second of all, the Univents, the way they operate or the way they're going to operate, I mean, just talking about Western and Flossmoor, is the way that all of them operate. They are on a schedule. They shut down at night, and I bring them on about 2 hours before school starts, so we can heat up or cool down those rooms by the time the staff and students get there. So by the time school happens, we are in that kind of throttling back and forth to let more outside air in and exchange that air. Okay. Also with that, with I use a MERV 6 filter in all of our Univents and our air handlers also, which is also has a microbial agent on it, which traps and kills any kind of particulate. So they're operating at pretty much their optimum performance. It's great air circulation, and I think we'll be okay as far as the IDPDH and State Board of Education is recommending.
Just to piggyback on that, and David, I was kind of asking for that reason. I was going to bring up later, but so thank you for picking that up. But is this also the same for our heating as well? Does the heat kind of work in the same sort of way, or is?
Yes. Yes, it works in the exact same fashion.
Okay, perfect. So this is really in terms of our current events with the with health. I think this is really going to be an improvement.
I would agree. Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Hey Scott, can you again speak to? Sometimes I'm asking some of these questions because I want everybody to hear the answers. But can you talk about a little bit more about how often these filters are changed? And I mean, you may not want to get into the particulates about how much it's catching, but can you kind of share some of that also? Thanks.
Sure. Those filters on a regular basis are changed 3 times a year. They're changed over the summer now, over winter break, and then over spring break. With COVID, the pandemic happening, I'm going to do my best to try to squeeze in an extra change, at least just for the classroom Univent filters, depending on how they look and how dirty they get. That may happen around maybe Thanksgiving time, maybe a little bit earlier, but it does take some time for my staff to get into every single Univent and change them out. So we have to be careful with that. But at least 3 times, to answer your question, Dave, at least 3 times a year. And I'm going to look at making a 4th time happen.
Good news.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think, Fran, you still have the floor with the financial report.
Yeah, unfortunately, you've got yourself a memo there, but the reports, Courtney and I had a little snafu between the 2 of us, so I will get those to you. But let me just give you, these are still tentative reports anyway. We're finalizing some things with the Township Treasurer's Office. Rob hasn't put a couple of things in here yet, but the bottom line is, since the property tax relief grant money was given to us this year as opposed to next. So remember, the abatement will come off and it will impact the revenues next year, but the property tax relief grant money actually came to us in this fiscal year. So right now, tentatively, we are at about a $1.1 million surplus on last year. On ending the year at about a $31 million fund balance. There were a few other pieces in here that, led to that $1 million surplus. Of course, shutting down schools at the end of the year didn't hurt either. But I will be giving you once these numbers are final, along with the budget in August, we will go through both the way we end the year and the budget, and how we're going to be starting and what our plans are for next fiscal year when I present to you in August. So this is just kind of a preview of what's to come. The budget is in the process of being prepared right now. As you can imagine, with everything that's going on, it's been a little crazy, and trying to get that together for you. I am hopeful that you will be receiving at your homes the budget by the end of next week. And that'll give you a couple of weeks to go over the document, and then I will be presenting it at the second meeting in August.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions? Nope.
I got one question. Is the finance committee going to be required, needing, or requested to meet anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm going to be sending that out to you as soon as I get the budget done, David, so that you and Misha and I can chat a little bit before my presentation in August.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
David is excited to hear that. I can tell. He's been waiting for that book, Fran. Okay, the next item on the agenda, there are several policy reads. Dana, is that you or is that?
That is Dr. Melnichenko.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. So I've got 3 policies there. The first 2 are related to just some updates that have happened due to the pandemic, and then the 720 is the bullying policy. So earlier you approved policies that just updated the complaint manager from Robin to Jackie Janicki. 720 was in that group, but through reviewing some of the updates from press, that one had a little bit more updates to it than just changing a name. So wanted to get that policy updated completely before just changing the name over. 220 or 2220 has updates because of the Open Meetings Act and the ability to not be physically present for a quorum. And then 4180 also has some of those updates related to the COVID pandemic.
Any questions or comments about those policies? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Eric.
Next item on the agenda. Sorry.
Calendar changes.
Yes, the changes, the recommended changes to the 2020-2021 calendar.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. So COVID is responsible for some of this, but some of the other changes are just a matter of decisions that have been made either locally by District 161 or by the state. So just a couple of things to take a look at. We can talk a little bit more about some of these things later on in the meeting. But we'd like to recommend moving the first day of student attendance to Monday, August 17th. Right now, it is supposed to be Thursday, August 13th. We would recommend using the 13th, which is a Thursday, and the 14th, which is a Friday, as remote learning planning days. It'll give us flexibility to work with our teachers on delivering the remote instruction, working in a hybrid model, practicing all of our protocols for getting students into the building, out of the building, between classrooms, et cetera. So those 2 days will be very valuable as our teachers and administrators prepare to welcome students the following week. Since they are remote learning planning days, I wouldn't change the end date of the school year. We would still get out on time. Those 2 count as student attendance days. We get a total of 5 of them. The thought is if we do have to go back to remote learning, hastily, maybe later in the winter, we'll have at least 3 days on hand that we can take. We can do some planning with our teachers, make sure that we're really ready to go if we do have to jump right back into remote learning at a time that we hadn't planned for it. In addition, November 3rd is the election day. That is by state law, schools will be closed. So we will add that to the calendar. And then Monday, January 4th, we did negotiate an additional institute day in the last collective bargaining agreement with the teachers. So we have 4 total. We have 3 at the beginning of the year, and then we have the 1 in January. So that would be January 4th, and the students would return on Tuesday, January 5th. And that's it.
So on the Monday, are we to assume that on Monday, those who will be participating in the hybrid model will start Monday full swing, getting on the bus and doing the hybrid thing at the respective schools?
I think we could assume that some of them will. We need to work out some details this week, but when we spoke last week, really, I think the intention would be to slow roll that first week. So, start with a couple of grade levels, say start with our 4th and 5th graders at Western Avenue, but across the district. It's a manageable number. We can bring those children in, get them used to the policies, the procedures, kind of practice, and then the next day bring in a different group. And again, make sure that they understand the expectations and how to move through the building. What does it look like to come and get your temperature checked, et cetera. And so you'll really kind of slow roll that first week. And then, full swing, no later than August 24th, but certainly the week of August 17th, we're starting up all the programs. And, as Christina mentioned earlier, anything that we can do creatively to form those relationships, get those transitions in for the incoming kindergartners or incoming 6th graders, we'll want to do that as well. In addition, we know that we'll have something different for those 8th graders who go to HF for some of those classes, and we'll just want to make sure that we are ready to go for them as well.
So that Thursday and Friday starting remote, will the hybrid kids also start their remote learning on that day?
No, so no students would start until the 27th or the 17th, I'm sorry. So that Thursday and Friday, would be, they're called remote learning planning days, but
oh, just for teachers. Okay.
Yeah, just for staff. Mm-hmm.
So I personally think that starting slow and with a first, however many grades you think are appropriate on that first day and the second day makes sense, especially if you're able to start with the younger kids, because they are the ones I think who will require a lot more time and attention in explaining all of the new rules. I just know what happens traditionally when that school bus rolls up and the kids get off, right? And they go straight to the blacktop and backpacks go off. So I think it will take time for them to get used to whatever the new system is going to be. So I think as much opportunity that we could give the younger kids to get used to the new system before other kids are in the building, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dana, I don't know if this question fits into the calendar portion, but I'm going to let it fly anyway. So because we're going to start on the 17th, what day or date, and I guess this also comes with like a little asterisk if this has been thought about, are parents going to kind of get a chance to get a real walkthrough and see kind of what school reopening looks like?
I think that walkthrough question is tenuous at best. So I think that's going to be challenging because again, we're still limited on no more than 50 people in one space. And so as we, move through that process of getting kids back in the building, I think our best opportunity will be as we get into that week of the 17th. If we are doing kind of a slow rollout, I think we'll be able to manage the numbers in a way that we can probably allow some flexibility to get some parents in there, because truly once school begins, parent volunteers and other visitors will be minimal, if not zero.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the same question. I think you kind of answered it, but I really want to just make sure we elaborate on this. So are you saying that it's going to be a possibility then for some parents to actually then kind of do a walkthrough, and it will happen sometime before the 17th? Is that what you're saying? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's problematic to try to do it. I think we can look at some way to, when we're bringing kids in the week of the 17th, we can probably start that and look at it that way. But you also have to remember, we don't have anyone there before August 10th because the teachers come back on the 10th. And we know that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday are basically full with work that we've already agreed to do, whether it's on capturing kids' hearts or the thoughtful classroom, et cetera. And then we'll have those 2 days on Thursday and Friday to continue our training, teacher meetings at the grade levels, at the buildings, teacher meetings, articulation, fourth and fifth graders, teachers meeting, fourth and third, et cetera. So we'll have meetings and we've got things planned. If we're looking at a full set of building tours, I don't know that we're in a position to offer that.
I have a question, and maybe this could resolve that, and not to put any more pressure on any principals. So I'm going to smile as I say it, and I don't want to do this, but maybe what would help is a building tour. Like, hey, here's me and my phone, and I'm going to walk you through what this is going to look like. I'm reaching.
Oh, virtual.
Yeah,
virtual
I think
tours.
simulations.
Oh, we could absolutely do that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think if there's time to do it, I mean, I think it is, because David, I think what you're raising is this need for parents to have as much communication as possible about what is the day in the life going to look like for their kids. So I think that there's opportunities to do that in a few different ways. So I think really spelling it out in the guidebook that that we have draft form of now. I think clearly articulating stuff there. But I think also if there's time to do simulations, that would be helpful. And it can be, yes, walking through with her phone. Maybe it's not a simulation, but maybe it is one of the principals sort of walking through. And then I also just think any kind of visual, right? Like I would love to see it. I think parents would love to see, this is what the classroom is going to look like for those who are in a hybrid. Like this is how we imagine kids will be. This is how we imagine kids might be on the playground. So I think is much information because it's going to just be a scary time. And that's just the reality of it, right? And so as much as we can do to ease the fear that parents will have so that we don't let that transfer over to our kids on that first day, I think the more we can provide, the better. So I know we're now, 4 weeks away?
Yeah, a little bit under 4 weeks.
Yeah, so there's a lot to do, but I think that, we will all appreciate, any type of visual that makes sense. It's such a short, it doesn't have to be an Oscar, cinematography type thing. Like just give parents some idea of this is where kids are getting off. These are, because I think we mentioned there'll be, one entrance, that is being used. I mean, so just as much information. And I know you already know this, but I think that's what David was getting to was what can parents expect?
Exactly. And thank you, Christina and Michelle, because that's exactly what I was trying to get to. Like I said, I didn't know where to stick that into as a question, but except the calendar seemed to fit. Because I think that there's still some parents out there who are still trying to decide which one of the two options to go with. And if they had some type of idea, and that's kind of what I want to talk about at least today, what that would look like, it might help them make a better, make a better decision, period.
I also want to remember our special ed students too with aids and stuff. I know that is kind of confusing at this point too, what that looks like even on off days for hybrid. I mean, what does that look like? So I think maybe that addressing that for our kids with IEPs, like how is that going to look? Michelle mentioned that earlier, but maybe a visual of that, like what does that look like on the off days for hybrid? That's something that just popped into my head.
Carolyn, did you have a question or were you getting ready to say something?
No, my questions are related, but it seems like there's another space when we talk about the draft plan. So I'll wait until we're done with calendar to ask.
Okay.
I had one question about the calendar.
Oh, go ahead, Ken.
So this November election day is officially a holiday, but we've discussed in the past concerns that community members and some of the board members have had surrounding the April election day and using the schools as a polling place. And so if we're looking at the calendar, should we be considering not having school on those days, on whatever day that is in April?
Yeah, I mean, now would be a good time to have that conversation. Obviously, with the national election, that was kind of taken care of for us for November, but obviously April is on the table. In the past, we have not, but you know, local districts around us have closed. For those elections, the buildings are still open. We use Parker, Flossmoor Hills, and Serena Hills as polling centers, and so that would still remain. You know, we can, obviously we're coming back next week. We can take a look at that April date.
Just food for thought. I'm actually, you know, I personally was never all that invested in that issue, but I know other board members have brought it up, and it seems like it seems silly to fight about it, to argue about it now that half of our election days are already decided for us. But you know, if there's a way we can do it that the teachers are happy, maybe we should look at that.
Okay.
And Dana, I guess from my perspective, again, I just can't get my mind out of the Rona. So if we're still, quote unquote, still looking at the virus scenarios, I guess can we, if we do close down for April, which I could support that, do we have enough calendar days toward the end of the calendar to push that day back and still meet state requirements? Are we fixed to the 165? Can we go, you know, can we have more days in the calendar year? Does that have an impact on the FEA? Does it have an impact on anything else?
Yes. So, but if we, you know, obviously if we're not in school on the April election day, that's just a day that's added. So in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't affect much. It would extend our final school day by one day. When you add in the November 3rd and when you add in the January 4th, that's another 2. So essentially, we would be getting out a little bit later in May, but still in May.
Would we just make that a remote learning day?
We could. We absolutely could.
I mean, not to chintz anybody on a in-person day if we can be in person, but you know, if it's an issue, because I know that people make plans, you know, and they forget that snow happens, that, you know, something to consider.
Yeah, we could absolutely. Yeah, all right. So why don't we talk about it, and we'll bring back a recommendation for next Monday. I think a remote learning day could be a good option.
I hate to say that out loud, but.
Any other?
There's always somebody that wants to take away the snow day. There's always one.
It's true.
Oh, there's no more snow day. It's remote snow day.
Yeah, they're a thing of the past now.
Any more questions or comments about the proposed revised schedule? Okay. And now to the draft of the reopening plan.
One more. This is a Fran. Their ISIC insurance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the ISIC withdrawal.
Yeah. So what I'm bringing to you last year, so the ISIC cooperative we are a part of, it is where we get our property casualty insurance from. It also covers school board legal and a bunch of other smaller policies. But we are down to 8 members of the co-op, 6 school districts and 2 special education cooperatives. As you can imagine, the property casualty business has kind of been blowing up on us lately. And last year it really got bad, especially with sexual molestation cases. And one of the special ed cooperatives had a couple of very large claims. So our rates were going up tremendously. Additionally, Hartford decided to pull out of the entire public entity market, and that's who we had the majority of our coverage with. And the market that was left wasn't all that keen on picking up a school cooperative because the claims have been really up over the last several years. The rates would have gone up 180%, except the board members chose to use, we had a lot of excess balances from prior years, so we closed out some prior years that no longer had any claims in them and had some excess cash. We closed out those years' claims and we used it to offset the premium rates. We decided we would see what the year brought, try and go to market, but at the same time start also looking at other cooperatives for the 8 districts to move to. And then COVID happened. So it's not really been a very good year. The market continues to be very, very difficult. The policy is actually expired December 31st. However, because of the bylaws of the ISA cooperative, we're being advised to put the resolution to withdraw in now. We started looking at the market again as a group and it just wasn't worth it. So I do have SKIP is another pool. It's a significantly larger pool than the one that we're currently in. It is run by Arthur J. Gallagher. They have taken all of our information and they're working on getting us a quote. It would be tentative, of course, because we'd be joining them with their new renewal as well. But I'll have a better idea on numbers, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. Jim Graff over at Gallagher thought that he'd probably be able to get me some numbers this week or the beginning of next. So I'll be bringing more information back to you in August. But also in August, though, I will ask you to approve this resolution to withdraw from the co-op. Questions?
We'll bring it back when?
I'll bring the resolution back to you next meeting for approval. But the numbers for SKIP probably will be coming in tentative form. I'm hoping this week. So I'll be able to get you that information at the next meeting as well.
Do we have any sense whether those numbers are likely to come in at what we were already paying? Or...
My understanding when I spoke to Jim was he felt like it was going to be in the same ballpark. Of course, they're out in the market right now trying to get renewal rates as well. So what it would become come January 1st, I really can't say. The market is really rough right now. But if we get into a pool that does not have a lot of special ed cooperatives, and I will tell you this, that the 2 cooperatives that are also going to be withdrawing here, they won't be going into this co-op because SKIP has made the determination that they won't take the special ed cooperatives. So without them, I'm hoping that we'll see better premium rates.
Okay. Great. Thank you,
Any
Fran.
other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Fran.
Yep.
Now the reopening plan.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll go through this. A lot of this information we've talked about. There's some new information as well. And certainly by next week, you probably won't even recognize the document. We've received a few from some of my colleagues in the area. So we have some other documents to work from. So we'll probably see if they have any information that's better than what we have and borrow that. We'll also update our own information with our new thinking as we address the different pieces, as we talk about, kind of providing some virtual examples, et cetera. But really kind of following the work that we've talked about, the general buckets, how we've looked at everything, not only communication, but PPE and distancing and screening, modifications to our facilities, sanitizing. We know that transportation is a huge issue, but then we've also hit on food services, personnel, instruction, and some information for families. So the beginning really kind of starts off, and I'm certainly not going to go through this and read this. There's a lot of information here. I think it's up to 16 pages. It will probably be closer to 25 when it's officially done. As I mentioned, we are meeting tomorrow and all of Wednesday and Thursday focused on this issue. So we'll continue to build out some of the specific pieces, but really clear kind of delineation right away. We know that masks are mandatory. On adults, they do have the option of wearing a face shield in addition to a mask, but not solely. So we'll want to clarify that we will provide face shields for our staff members, but face shields must be worn in conjunction with a face mask. I do know that we're also looking at some specialty face masks so that they're clear over the mouth, especially important for any work that our students are doing on reading and speech and language. So, we'll have to have some specialty, masks probably for students and staff, but we'll do those for programs and students as needed. We know that go ahead, Steve.
On that, do we have students who are deaf and hard of hearing in our district who really rely on facial cues and lip reading, to the best of your knowledge?
I would have to double check. My initial thought is not necessarily. We definitely have students who are hard of hearing, but I can come back on that for you.
Okay, because I know that when I have worked with those kids, they the whole face was the whole communication. I mean, it wasn't just words.
Absolutely.
Anyway, just throwing that out there.
Absolutely. Good question. Okay. So we know that parents will have to screen their children, and they'll have to agree that they're not going to send their kids to school with COVID symptoms. As we know, there are a lot of COVID symptoms, and so when parents are going through that screening process with their children, we'll want them just to reflect on the temperature and any coughs or sore throat, etc. And then guidance for parents. We'll build this out with additional information on what this specifically looks like. We have decisions to make on how that information is going to come to the school, how we're going to track that information. As you can imagine, the vendors are coming out of the woodwork with a new app or a new add-on for their software, et cetera, to capture that information. So we'll make those decisions this week on how we're going to capture that and put those final steps and procedures in place. We do know that obviously staff will be self-certified as well, and will provide temperature checks for students who have not been certified, and we need to make sure that they are safe before entering their particular building. If they aren't, or they are, a student is at school and comes down with COVID symptoms, we will have quarantine rooms in place where we can send those students and certainly keep them in a safe environment, but away from other children so that they can be sent home. We will have a lot of training for our students, for our staff. We would expect that, not only in a lot of face-to-face training for our staff members, the classroom teachers on what the protocols look like, but also with the nurses, for example, and what contact tracing looks like. We'll have example videos for students on, here's how you take your mask off. Here's when you're having lunch, you take your mask off and you'll hang it here so that it doesn't get messy or you're not cross-contaminating. So we know that we will have a lot of training to do. We'll try to capture as much of this on video so it exists, and it's a good resource for our families, siblings, etc., as we move through.
Dana.
Yes, hi, Misha.
I just have a question. So if a kid comes and then they exhibit symptoms, I see that it has the, you have to have the 2 negative COVID tests or be fever-free.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's caught before so I'm certifying and then I'm like, and I don't know she has COVID or what he or she has COVID, but you just aren't feeling well.
Right.
And so I'm like, hey, I don't want to send her to school because I don't know what's going on. And then it turns out like, what's the next step that the parent would do? It's like how if your kid throws up in the morning, they're like, okay, don't send them to school. You got to wait 24 hours before you send them the next day or whatever. So what would it be the same thing that they would need to get something to prove that, like, and you may not have the answer for that. I was just thinking, like, if it's caught before they get there, then how do they come back?
Let me clarify. I know Kathy Canal was looking for some additional information from the Illinois Department of Public Health on that. Because we will have that. We'll have families like, oh, you're not feeling well. It's probably not COVID, but we don't want to send you anyway. Now what? Is that an automatic 14 days? Is it a 10-day? Are you getting tested? So we'll give us till next week on that. We should have some additional information.
Okay.
That's a really good question. And I honestly think that's going to come up a lot as parents are very just cautious about sending their kids back. We want to make sure that everyone knows what to do. So we'll bring you back an answer for that.
They also want to know how other families might be held accountable in a way that's uniform throughout the district. So, I mean.
What do you mean?
Well, just, you know, they want to know if family A sends a kid to school, and I'm going to just say, you know, my family's response when I was a kid was, "You're too young to be sick. Go to school." That is a direct quote. That probably is not how family B handled things, and that's certainly not how I handle things now. So I think that people would really appreciate if we had something really just as clear as possible. Don't do this if you are having these symptoms, and if you do have these symptoms, you know, have something that is other than, well, he feels okay, he seems okay, when they come back to school, because that's something that I know that a lot of parents are concerned about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm kind of with Steve on that, because just like Misha spoke to those who are really going to be trying to do the right thing, I also like to see that there's equity with those parents who may consider, you know, giving their child some Benadryl or some Tylenol to knock off that edge for the first hour, and then all of a sudden the child is at school and, you know, we've got an issue.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, you know, that's the dangerous game there, you know, because a child with symptoms in school is almost guaranteed a 14-day quarantine, guaranteed. So, you know, our position would strongly encourage families not to do the Benadryl or Tylenol move, because, you know, what could be a 2 or 3 day process, maybe it's a simple cold, coming to school and exhibiting COVID symptoms is a 14-day out for sure, unless you have the 2 negative tests. And so we'll try to build all that out so parents clearly understand what goes into that.
Is there any, go ahead. Go ahead, Carolyn, go ahead.
So if, let's say that happens, and so let's say this is a hybrid family, how do we handle like the sibling who is not feeling sick, but now they're going to quarantine? What happens to the hybrid kid that has potential exposure, but can do work? How do they continue their work if they're a hybrid person and now they're home?
Well, so we're going to have to talk about what that looks like, because you know, you asked a couple of questions. One was the sibling issue. All of those are one-off situations based on contact tracing and the current situation, because the sibling might be okay, but, you know, another kid might not be because they broke social distancing without masks or something, right? So it all depends on, you know, the adults and students in relation to that child. And then if, you know, we do place a student out, I think that's part of the work that we have to do, because remember, our hybrid teachers are teaching in person, so they're not going to be able to just pop out to do a live session with students. So I think we have to have a plan for that. We've talked about some different ways to keep those kids engaged and moving forward, but we need to finalize them. We'll have a draft for next Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Dana, I thought that the Illinois Department of Public Health was kind of clear on the whole contact tracer thing and the whole family thing, so that, again, so that you don't have a cohort that is then taken out. And I understand to Carolyn's question perfectly, but I think that aren't we trying to really just make sure we're following those guidelines to make sure that we reduce those risks, as opposed to trying to make determinations on our own?
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, again, if we do have a child who's, identified as having COVID, there will be quarantines that probably expand from that child. And so depending on, who they were working with, and if everyone is following the mask protocols, it could be smaller, but we should assume that, if people do get COVID, there will be quarantines that extend beyond that person, following the guidelines.
Dana, my question is, so I know in personal experience from having to go get tested, it's not as easy as one would think to come across and find a location to test children. So can we have that information readily available for our parents on where child testing sites are available? Because they're not everywhere. Additionally, they're not the same across the board as far as rapid tests. They're the same, it's the same test. But as far as length of time, a rapid test, you can find out within 45 minutes at some locations. Others, it takes upwards of 7 to 10 days. So, I mean, if we can have that information, that'd be awesome. Additionally, as far as the quarantining for, those 14 days, for quarantining for those 14 days, those students, apparently their attendance doesn't get counted against them, just as, right, that we have to just forgive that too.
I'm not concerned about the attendance. I guess I'm more concerned about,
sure,
either keeping them moving, in some sort of remote fashion, as long as we know that they're engaging, the 14 days is the 14 days, we can make that work.
So my next question is from an allergy sufferer of myself. I've had COVID symptoms for, I don't know, upwards of 8 weeks, 10 weeks now, and which are all COVID symptoms. So if this is me going to school, I would not go to school, I guess. So, but I know I've been negatively tested several times now. I guess I just don't know how we're going to handle. I don't know. I don't have any idea how this is really, truly, do you get where I'm going with that? How are we going to deal with that?
Carefully. We're still waiting on guidance. Actually, Fran and I spoke about the asthma issue today. And, as much as we would love to have all of the, specific information on something that's very specific, for example, kids with asthma, that's going to happen. We know that we have them. I think we can get guidance on that. But, for other ailments that may present themselves with COVID symptoms, we're just going to have to handle those on, individual bases, so to speak. But the allergy one, I think some of those common ones I think we can get to. As I mentioned, we're planning this week. Kathy Canal will be back tomorrow, and we'll pick it up there.
I also just want to point out the importance of the agreement that parents will be signing, those who will be participating in the hybrid model. I mean, so I hear your concerns, David, and, I'm extremely hopeful that those parents who select the hybrid model will sign the agreement, and we will clearly articulate in our documents, what does it mean that a parent has to verify? What does that mean? Who's checking it? Who's verifying it, and what happens? Like, all of these steps, are things I think that will make its way to the document that you're looking at now, Dana. But I think, there's an enormous amount of trust that we will need to have when it comes to all of our families. And I mean, safety is extremely important to every single family in this community. So we just hope that guidelines will be followed, the agreement will be signed, kids will understand to the best a 5-year-old can understand, what the policies are. And then I think some of the stuff, Christina, like, nobody knows. That's what the frustrating part about all of this is, that in practice, no one really knows what any of these plans are going to look like in any district.
Right. But I think as much as we can think through the different protocols and the practices, make sure that we've brought in a number of staff members, whether it's classroom teachers or custodians, administrators, specialists, just to make sure that our plans are really focused on the right areas. And of course, working with not only parents on this as well. So we have a lot of eyes looking at it. We want to make sure that it's comprehensive and that we don't forget any particular perspectives or angles. So this document will continue to grow. It'll probably be in draft form until we're done, because we want to keep building and adding to it and making it better. One of the other pieces in here that's new is some guidance on the start times. We know that busing, not only picking up, but dropping off and then sanitizing and then going out again for another stacked route will take longer. And so we would like to adjust the start times, moving the dismissal time at Parker up to 12:45. We would provide a snack for them during the day and then a bag lunch as those kids leave. But if we kept the start time at the same time, 7:45, officially those kids can begin arriving at 7:35. It gives us an opportunity to get the buses to Parker, have all the students exit safely, get those buses sanitized, and then remember all of our Parker buses are paired with an elementary route. So they would leave Parker and then go pick up for Serena or Heather, Flossmoor, Western, et cetera. And on the flip side, dismissing at 12:45 will allow those buses to get home, drop the Parker Junior High students off, sanitize again, and then back to the elementary students to pick up by 3 o'clock and to take those students home.
Hey, Dana, I just want to ask another question about the quarantining of a child who has symptoms. So, and this is more a cost question. Are we predicting that our current staffing from a nursing standpoint will be able to handle the quarantining, or are we going to be looking at additional costs for either the room itself or additional costs for specialized nurses, et cetera, et cetera?
I think there's a lot of different models out there. One of the places we are looking to just provide more coverage would be with nurses. If you remember to last year, we have not had much luck hiring nurses in District 161. We have had a position posted just to try to get candidates for the last several weeks, longer even. We do have 2 candidates, one may be viable, one not. And again, we're coming up on probably 2 months of having that job posted. So there are models out there for how the quarantine rooms are being staffed and covered. Remember, a quarantine room is a short-term visit, right? A child would be sent to the quarantine room before they are picked up and sent home with, mom, dad, another guardian, grandma, grandpa, et cetera. So we'll obviously have to have those rooms staffed, but it's not a 100% staffing because we won't have kids in there 100% of the time. So part of it will be flexible, and we're trying to figure out what that means for us right now. Obviously, having extra nurses on hand would be great. They just don't exist.
Are we going to have some sort of remote learning opportunity or some learning function for kids who are in the quarantine room while they're there? I mean, if they're there for like an hour or so, is it going to be like quiet reading or something?
Yeah, we'll have something for them to do, but really, if you make it to the quarantine room, you're probably sick.
Yes, and I would, and again, I'm really thinking of this as these are great ideas, and I think they should be in place. And I don't mean to be the raven here, but I think that this whole scenario with COVID, it just really illustrates something that we need to address moving forward, because what are we going to do next time? And I think these are great things to work out. I also would imagine a scenario where a kid is in a quarantine room and for some reason you can't get a hold of parents, or They just can't pick them up, and they may be there for longer than just like an hour. In which case,
It's no different than any
Yeah.
other day when a child comes to the office ill. You know, make every opportunity to get in touch with the family, get the child picked up if that's what the nurse decides. And then if they're sitting there, find some things that they can work on effectively, you know, assuming though that they are probably ill to begin with.
right. Okay.
So, all right. So obviously we've talked about the transportation, still working on a number of those different pieces, but we've talked about the certification. We've got some work to do on food service. Just I know Fran has some additional information from our vendor, so we'll get that updated. But essentially, I would say the big rock here is sending home breakfasts, just like we did over the summer. So we're not preparing those meals at school. We're sending them home a couple of days per week, just like we did over the summer. So those students have breakfast food at home. We've talked about the additional subs. Dave and Steve talked about the nurses. We know that we need additional support, certainly on the cleaning side and moving those evening custodians to the day. But you know what we really want to.
Dana, I got
Yep.
a question on transportation.
Absolutely.
Regarding transportation, so give me a visual. Are the kids gonna be sitting like every other seat? How you gonna maintain 6 feet apart? And are the bus drivers gonna be like shielded? And are children going to be tested at the bus stop, or are they gonna be tested at school in terms of temperature?
Fran?
So the way the buses are going to look, there will be no more than 48 students on a bus. And honestly, I'm thinking of starting the year a lot lower than that, because I think that we'll have, at least right now, it looks like of the students who've decided to go hybrid, only about half of them are going to be taking the buses anyway. So we should have pretty low rider on the buses to begin with. So we're going to keep them low, because I'm hoping as this year goes on, maybe we'll get a little more normalcy and people will start using the buses. So I want to have room to put more students on. They will be assigned seats. We'll send that with the route information, and the bus stop information will be where you are seating on the bus. If you're getting on with a sibling, there's a chance that you'll be sitting in the same seat. You know, it'll be two of them, but it'll be from your own household. Children will be asked if they have their self-certification when they board the bus. If they do, they'll go to their assigned seat, and we will start the assigned seats towards the back of the bus, so that as kids are getting on the first stops, they'll go to the back and work their way forward. If a student does not have their self-certification, they're actually going to be put in one of the first couple of rows, so that we can pull them off the bus first to go get temperature check and symptom check as soon as we get to the school. If a student arrives and they do not have a mask, we will have extra masks, a box of masks on each bus, so that we can hand it to the child and have them mask up, because they will be 100% required to wear masks on the buses as well. We'll probably have the windows open for the majority of the route, so that we have more circulation within the bus. The buses, the bus drivers and aides, there will be an aide on every bus. They will be masked up. Some of them may even be shielded up. It's kind of their call what they would like to do, but they will definitely be masked up. That's kind of where we're at for the moment.
And with the fresh air issue, is this something that they have planned for in the wintertime as well, when it's significantly colder and the windows are more open?
Yeah, we're still working on that. I mean, I would imagine that we'll probably have some of them cracked
Right.
with the heat going, but yes.
I mean, I don't think that, you know, we have to have a convertible bus riding down the street in January.
Right. Right. We're going to have to get reasonable about it, and we'll figure this out as we move forward.
Okay. All right.
Good. Great.
The aides will come from us.
No, the aides are Paige's aides. I'm sorry, Kickert's aides. We're no longer with Paige. It's Kickert now.
Okay, and you may not know the answer to this question yet, but I know certainly in years past we've had our old bus company in particular has had their own staffing issues and making sure they have enough drivers. And so is there anything that gives you pause right now about whether or not the bus company will be adequately staffed and trained and ready to go?
The information that I have right now is that actually all of our drivers from Page are now kickered. So we have all but one of the drivers is the same from last year, so they'll be familiar with our routes, etc. Same thing with the aides. Is the majority of those aides. We were almost close to 100% of the buses having aides by the end of the school year anyway, and those personnel, they'll follow us.
Okay. That's helpful. And I think the way that Dana, I think I just heard you describe a little bit of the process. I think like that information in this guide will be extremely helpful, right? Like, so parents need to know, you know, students will have to show some sort of proof upon entering the bus that certification has happened. If it doesn't, when you get to school, you know, Fran just said, you know, these kids will be sitting in the first row. They'll be the first ones off. You know, how will students exit the bus? And will they go to the door? Or, I mean, I don't even know how you're going to do it this year, but so all of that information, I think, is going to be crucial to help ease the stress associated with day one. Because there's already stress even when we're not in a pandemic, right? On day one, especially for your kindergartners, sort of knowing what to do on the first day. But I think if parents have a clear vision of when my kid gets off of the bus or when they get out of my car, they are going to go here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do we know what that, I'm sorry, Dina, do we know what that self-certification that Michelle and everyone has mentioned looks like? Or is it going to be like a tear off paper? Or what does it look like?
We're working on a couple models.
Okay.
So we'll make a decision on it this week. We just had to look at some costs and getting the materials to do it.
And the temperature reading that we will have in our buildings, what are we using? Is it going to be something that kids, you know, on the forehead, they're walking through? Like, what are you thinking that will be?
Well, we have two. We'll have face scanners, and we will also have instant read thermometers deployed to the nurses, et cetera.
And will we have that in time for the 17th?
Oh, yeah. Yep, we'll be ready.
Because I can imagine every school district in the world right now.
Oh, yeah.
Looking for the same thing, right?
Definitely. That's why, you know, we've been ordering for weeks. So
do we have enough batteries too? Because we're going to go through them.
Yeah, I don't know. I will make sure that we have enough. I promise. Definitely.
Dana, we spent a lot of time focused on instructional minutes at Parker last year. What will the teachers be doing after 12:45? The Parker students are dismissed at 12:45.
All right, we're going to get into that, and I'm going to turn it over to Amabel because, you know, certainly the logistics in this plan are very important, but we wanted to talk about just what the different programs look like. Obviously, we have a remote program, we've got a hybrid program, but at the end of the day, the expectations are the same, the content is the same, and the curriculum is the same. So whether a family is in the hybrid process where their kids are in school 2 days per week physically, or the remote program where they're fully remote 5 days a week, we have the same expectations, they're using the same curriculum, the same pacing, and the same kind of flow. So Amabel can talk a little bit about both programs. She could also talk, Cam, about your question about how the time breaks out between the different levels and how we'll be using that. So Amabel?
Before,
hold on.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Amabel. Before the Amabel part of this, I sent a question about this earlier, and you know, this is something my wife has asked me. Looking at what HF may be doing and looking at what Homewood is doing, to what degree are we either on the same page with a hybrid Monday, Tuesday, or Monday, Wednesday scheduling, so that parents in the district, if they have a kid who's going to one of the schools, will have an easier time finding childcare for all their kids on specific days of the week. So, for example,
Well, Steve, I think the challenge is the high school hasn't committed.
well, that's a huge
Right.
one.
And so at the end of the day, we do have 3 school districts, and Dale, Vaughn, and I work very close together. But at the end of the day, we are 3 separate entities, and we do have, if the high school has a hybrid model, it may be different than ours. I'm not sure that they're going to have one, and frankly, just out of our duty to the board and to the community, we had to move forward.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely, and this is not a criticism in any way with what we are doing. I guess I'm throwing this out there because, I think we have worked very hard. I am very proud of the work that we've done. People tell me all the time how proud they are of what we have done in our district.
Yep.
I even talk to people in other states and they say, wow, that's a great idea. But I guess, and again, other districts are gonna have to decide what they're gonna do. I work in another district where some of our kids go. I'm not quite sure what we're doing. I hope I learn soon. I guess, and again, I wanted to mention this before we got into the curriculum and instruction part, because I know that this will come up as an issue as in the coming weeks as people see other plans unfold. So,
yep.
That's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we'll continue to work with the high school. Obviously, we have 8th grade students heading over there for some classes.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that our kids are in a good position and ready to go.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, Annabelle, I know you're waiting to talk about the different programs.
No, that's fine. And just to that point, we are in Homewood and 161, we are in communication with the high school that as soon as they give us more detail on what those classes for our junior high students will look like, that they will still be provided, just pending what the final decision is from the high school. Once we know that, we can move forward with letting our families know. But as Dana mentioned, our expectations for students and in the hybrid program and in the remote program are the same. So grades will be taken, assignments will need to be completed, attendance will be recorded in the traditional model. Really the opportunities of the hybrid model are that we can safely provide in-person instruction, and that teachers will be able to modify their instruction to do that in a small group setting, because we are effectively cutting those classrooms in half. Depending on how those percentages work out at each building, we'll take a look at that once we have all of the final parent responses and be able to really see the number of students that we will potentially have in person on either set of the hybrid days. But we will be utilizing the same curriculum. We will still use our common assessments in both programs, as well as NWA MAP, which has started to roll out their procedures for remotely testing students as well. So we will be able to still provide the core functions of our instructional models in both settings. The other thing is that we are offering some training to our teachers this summer, coming up very soon. We're focusing on Canvas. We are focusing on CKH in a virtual environment, instructional best practices, and also SEL for both in person, of course, and in a remote setting. So we are confident that we will still be able to utilize all of our resources. How we utilize them may be different depending on the hybrid or the remote setting, but all of those bricks will still be in place. The other thing with the remote setting that we're stressing is that we're not relying on recorded lessons as we did in the spring. We will be expecting students and teachers to participate in live in-person sessions throughout the day. Students will receive a schedule with their meeting times. Teachers will be teaching live, and we've been doing that in the summer school program, and it's been really successful, and we've had really good feedback from our parents and our teachers, and I think our teachers who did summer school have learned a lot through that process. So versus students seeing a recording and following along with that, they will be live in class in the remote program throughout the day. We will still need to tweak those sample schedules again once we know what the final number of students will be based on the parent selections, and we'll work through that later this week as we're getting responses. And then on the days that the hybrid students are off-site, when they're at home, they will have assignments. Everything will be through Canvas. So a lot of the feedback from the spring we've taken, and we will be utilizing Canvas exclusively, not just for the remote learning program, but also for the hybrid program, which will be really important for consistency, because everyone will be on remote learning on Fridays. So those Friday remote learning days will give all teachers an opportunity to sharpen their remote teaching skills, and also allow of course, our buildings to be sanitized on those days, but everyone will have experience and a toolkit for teaching remotely, whether you are a hybrid teacher or you are in the remote program. And Cam, to your question around the Parker schedule, so the original thinking around the dismissal for the 1245 at Parker is really because when Fran and I sat down and mapped out for the hybrid model what it would look like to provide lunch safely to all students, it really came down to 18 staff members that we would need on hand and over 3 hours for lunch. So if you look at the schedule, we've condensed the day so that students are doing all of their instruction during the day before 1245, and then after 1245 will be time for teacher plan time, teacher meetings, and for us to prepare. The prep times have been eliminated from the other parts of the day, so the rest of the day would be dedicated for teacher planning and PLC meetings.
Hey, Emma Bell, I got a quick question. Actually, I have two questions. One, and maybe I missed it because I've been kind of bouncing about a little bit, but have you guys discussed what we're going to do with our special ed? And in particular, I know the hybrid calls for 2 days a week, but are we looking at maybe going 4 days a week for special ed? Second question. Regarding lunches, actually there's three questions. Regarding lunches, are we talking about doing those with the cohorts in place? Third question, can you tell me about how we're going to try to have outdoor classrooms as much as possible?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the first question, special education. Jackie and I are taking a look, as well as with the case managers, really depending on the students' plan, what services we need to provide, and then in addition to their plan, also their parent selection. So again, once we have those selections from the parents, we can really go kid by kid and take a look at their plan and what we need to do, and make sure that we can still, we have to still make sure we provide the services that are in their plan, whether the student is remote or hybrid. I think, David, your question is getting to is there an opportunity for those students to attend school more in the hybrid program, or, yeah. So we're taking a look at it. We really have to see what their parents select, and really the overarching thing it comes down to is what are their parents comfortable with, and so wanting to also still honor giving parents the choice with that.
Yeah, because to that stead, there may be students who have need for more than 2 days a week, and that's kind of what I'm really asking about. And I get the whole what comes first, the chicken or the egg, whether the parent says I want to go hybrid or remote first, but I do want to at least have this topic brought out and talked about right now so they can hear that. And so if they're trying to make a decision, they actually do see that we're trying to meet all the children's needs.
So if it's okay if I chime in for a second, Dr. Smith and Annabelle. Hello, everybody. We are looking to see, when we're looking at the level and continuum of service for students, our instructional students receive the highest level of assistance. So yes, we would like to, pose that as having an option for those parents. Again, as Annabelle said, they may not feel comfortable with that, but our students that are in a self-contained instructional program all day, even following with the guidance from the state, it is a very good idea for our district to offer them more. So that would be what we're looking for. And those EC children also, those are our preschool special education students also that need possibly more time within the classroom. Again, if a parent is not comfortable with that, we will make adjustments and make sure we are meeting those child's needs no matter what. Okay, sorry.
When are we expecting to get numbers? I know, we wanted to get the FAQ out for parents, but do we have a target date in mind? We want all the parents to get their preferences in so we can see what this is really going to look like?
Today.
So the surveys are due today. We've been monitoring the responses since it went out and sort of keeping track of what the percentages are of hybrid versus remote. But today was the deadline for the parent survey.
Okay. Can we get an update on where those wind up tomorrow, please?
Absolutely.
Well, here's a quick
Oh, there we go.
peek at it by school. The top chart is parent feedback. Bottom chart is staff feedback. Parents had two choices: remote learning, hybrid. We did ask a few other questions in that form, but that's not represented here. But you can see how it's shaking out currently. And I would say we're probably at about 60% of all families weighing in. So pretty close to a 50-50 remote hybrid, with, depending on the building, going a little bit further either way from that. And then obviously you can see the staff. Just as a reminder, we'll place staff members who are immunocompromised or who have nuclear family members who are immunocompromised or another medical certification in those hybrid classes first. And then, any staff members who chose remote learning, we would like to place those people into those sections. And then if we have additional sections left over, we'll individually reach out to staff members to place them in those positions.
Can you, I think you just said this, but what's the participation rate or response rate so far?
I think we're just over 60% of all families. And so the administrative assistants returned today, and I know they started calling families individually.
And so what's the plan if, because out of that 40%, you will still have some that you just can't reach. So what's the plan for those that you don't hear a response from?
Well, we will have to get a response. And so that probably involves some combination of continued phone calls, texts, certified letters that they will have to sign for. But at the end of the day, if we're still not getting anything from them, well, I suppose unenrolling is certainly an option, but we'll just have to place them into a program. And unfortunately, if we've come to the placement point and we've tried to contact them through all of those other ways, whether it's, like I said, phone, email, calling emergency contacts, et cetera, if they still don't get back to us, then unfortunately we'll just have to place them into a program and move forward.
I mean, practically speaking, if we are having that much trouble speaking with them, that doesn't really bode well for their ability to self-certify every day during the school year.
Correct.
And for point of clarification, because I know I was asked this question a lot over the past 48 hours, can you just confirm that whatever program you select now, there will not be an opportunity for parents to switch at all throughout the entire school year?
Well, certainly through the first quarter. And then I think we have to revisit it because some students may find success or they may not. And we certainly don't want to, if this is going to continue past October 16th, we don't want to lock somebody in a bad situation. And So we're already talking about what that looks like as far as a timeline in September to have those conversations. And then if there are families who would like to make a switch for the second quarter, to gather that information and to be prepared for that.
Okay, I think that's helpful because I think parents are a little confused, and many are thinking that whatever they select, they will be locked into that until, you know, June. And then Amabel, the schedule with the Parker schedule ending at 12:45, can you just clarify or confirm that the only thing that's missing from that schedule is lunch?
Right. So the lunch times are eliminated, and then also the classes that students would take when teachers would get their planned periods. So we removed some of the PE and encore classes so that we could prioritize the core instruction. And then we've been playing around and talking with the Parker BLT about how we could provide some of those experiences remotely to students on their home days.
Okay, so no lunch and then no PE or encore courses.
Well, Dana, can you scroll again? We can go back. So again, this is just a sample, but there is one time from 12 to 12:45 where we would be able to offer an encore or specials class. Our 8th graders would need to take their world languages classes during that time. So that's what we've been taking a look at, is how we can provide those classes during the students' at home days, so that we can make sure that we get to the core instruction and also have time for the protocol things that we have to do during the day in person.
Annabelle, what, if any, do you see as the impact of not having a double block of ELA for our 6th and 7th graders?
Yeah, so actually prior to, well, I don't want to say prior to because it feels like we've been in COVID for a really long time. But even with the revised schedule that we planned for, if we were going to have a full day, we had already determined that we would not have been able to keep the double block of ELA for 6th and 7th grade because of our teaming structure. And also just in order to make sure that we have enough teachers to teach the classes, in order to keep the class sizes from being ridiculously large. And we weren't comfortable with how large the classes would be if we kept that double block. So we were already anticipating the impact of having to adjust our common assessment schedule to make sure that we're still getting to the standards that we need to, but that we're not sort of backing all of those assessments up so that it's unobtainable. So we would still need to make those adjustments, even in this situation. We were already planning on having a single block of ELA.
Okay.
And then of course, 8th grade, their double block is the not double block, but that additional period is for their world languages classes.
So I guess I have a more broad question under the hybrid model, and maybe this is something that you're working on. For the students that leave class on Tuesday with projects and homework, where do they get the support that they might need if they have a question, they get stuck? And then that's part one. Part two is, what does the feedback assessment loop look like for students, say, I'm just like a Monday, Tuesday, they are submitting or they're done with something on Wednesday, but it's wrong. And now they need feedback to move on so that they can do the Thursday well. So how are those hybrid kids supported in those off times?
Yeah, we haven't defined what that will look like yet. It's something that we have to be really thoughtful of. As Dana mentioned earlier, our hybrid teachers are going to have a class with them. So they will not be able to remotely answer a question to a student or help them with their homework. So we have to be really thoughtful about what we're assigning on those at-home days, so that it's not busy work, and so that it's not work that students will not be able to engage with without teacher support. And to your point, also making sure that when those students come back, when they're 2 days on site return, that we're following up with, how did it go? Tell me about your assignments. Let's review. So we really have to be thoughtful with planning with the hybrid teachers for being intentional with that, because right now we don't have yet additional staff who will be able to be on hand to support those students when they're at home. So we really have to just think through being thoughtful about when they come back, what's the follow-up, and how are we going to pick up where they left off, and again, be mindful about what we're assigning so that it's purposeful and that it's relatable to what the students learned when they were in person. And that's all going to come with the training and the meetings that we need to have with our hybrid teachers to make sure we're all on the same page with that. But as it stands right now, we do not have staff on hand that will be able to support those students during the day or during their at-home days.
Okay, that's helpful. So then it leads me to a path to compare the two, hybrid and online, and teacher-pupil contact time, and if it mirrors hybrid or hybrid is mirroring online. That's the part I'm having a hard time understanding. So will the online kids too be doing more independent type work at some point? It's difficult for me to imagine those two groups operating at the same pace. So maybe you could help me understand that.
Yeah, and the pace may not stay consistent throughout the school year. I think, again, the opportunity with the hybrid groups is that those classes are really small. So the pace may go faster at times for them, and we want those classes to be much more targeted to what the students need, versus teaching as if we have a full class in front of us, and really differentiating for those smaller groups. But I think that the pacing may be different throughout the school year, but we will make sure that our teachers in both programs are planning together so that the exposure to the standards and what students need to master stays consistent, versus remote program students sort of going off on another direction compared to the in-person students. So it's really going to come down to planning and preparation and making sure that we're still exposing students to what they need to know by the end of the grade level.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Hi. I would just add also that I think the other opportunity, if you will, with the remote setting, and not to compare the two, but we did build time into the remote schedule for students to work independently also. So with both programs, the opportunity for students is that we're hoping to develop more self-management skills, and that's different at every grade level band, but there will be some need, whether it's the off-site days for the hybrid program or the independent work time during the remote plan. All of the students are going to need to have some skill development with just organizational skills and self-motivation and working through things independently. And again, that looks different at every grade level. I don't want to say that, a 5-year-old should be expected to do everything independently. There's obviously going to need to be adult level support as well. But all students will need to have some level of skill with that.
I'm still waiting on my other two questions to get answered about the.
So can you ask the question again about lunches, David? Did we address that?
No, you didn't. But it's okay. It's okay because there's a lot of great questions and a lot of great conversation, a lot of information that I think that all the people who are on this call need to hear. But the question was, and again, it's kind of in the same vein of just supplying information. Are we talking about doing lunches in the cohorts, or are the children going to be moving, to lunch? And then the second question was, can you please also elaborate on how you intend to maximize outdoor teaching?
Yes. Okay. So lunches. So at Parker, we're proposing that lunch would be take it and go. Lunches at the elementary building, we will be utilizing the classroom spaces for lunch. So those students would be together. And then for maximizing outdoor time, as much as possible, while the weather is nice, we encourage our classes to go outside. That will not always be possible, and our buildings will work on individual schedules to make sure that as they're utilizing outside space, we don't have too many classes outside at once. But each building will handle that, and again, depending on the weather, we encourage our teachers to utilize the outdoors.
So will the outdoor usage be something that is put into the structure, or it will be completely up to the teachers?
Well, I think, do you mean in terms of indicating up front on the schedule when we will be outdoors? Like on the schedule?
Yes, right. In other words, I guess as we're looking at it, one of the things that has been bantered about a lot is that if you can get a cohort outside, it just at least changes the environment. And if you get them outside, it also gives you an opportunity. If there had to be additional cleaning and sanitation, you could do it. If you get them outside, there's a lot of benefit to doing it. And so, if it's something that we're recommending versus something we're actually trying to put in place, I get it. And so I'm more just kind of asking how that is being kind of bantered about.
Yeah, I think just given how weather changes throughout the day, we would want the buildings to make those decisions to utilize outdoor space for classes, versus making it standard that you have to go outside at this time. Those are, if the weather changes in that day, it wouldn't be possible. So we would just rely on our buildings to make those decisions.
And lastly, and I think because Parker still has like facilities actually to almost conduct classes outside. Is that still correct?
No.
When you say facilities, you mean the outdoor area in the newer wing of the building?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know that we would be able to. We could accommodate a hybrid class in theory because those classes will be small. I don't know if we would be able to accommodate more than one at a time in that space. I would have to test it out.
Amabel, can we talk a little bit about ACE in our K-5 buildings?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like ACE is for 2 hours on Fridays. Is that right?
So that would be, Dana, if you could go.
It was hybrid.
It's for both groups, right? I think I remember.
Oh, on the remote Friday.
Friday remote. Friday.
Well, it happens in a couple of different locations.
Okay.
So we tried to place ACE and interventions throughout the schedule so that we can give flexibility with that. So not all students are in ACE. So we would need, that would be for some students, and for other students, we could be having other interventions during those times. So we tried to put it in a couple of different spots so that we would be able to meet all of those students' needs.
Okay, and then so my follow-up to that would be for both hybrid and remote K-5. I know several buildings, if not all, have some type of like walking reading or walking math. So you're a third grader, but you're really operating at a fourth grade, and that's part of our gifted and talented policy too. Will students still be accommodated that way? Will students have more than one teacher? Like they might have a reading teacher and a math teacher specifically in K-5?
Yeah, so that's something that we want to still offer. We really have to take a look at, once we know what students are in the hybrid program versus what students are remote only. We can absolutely do it. It just depends on which program those students are in. If they're in person, we just have to work out the movement of those teachers differently than if they're in the remote program, then it's much easier to work out.
I have a few questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I am driving, so I'm hands-free, don't worry about that. So I'll start by going back to the assessment. Carolyn, and you were speaking about formative assessments. I was wondering how we are going to do our back to school assessments for the MAP, and how we are going to do that with our online learners, with our remote learners. And my second question is a little bit different, and it kind of goes back to our students with IEPs. How are we going to, and I transitioned to my phone, so maybe I heard some of that. How are we going to make sure that our students who have IEPs are still getting the amount of clock hours that they need on their hybrid days that are remote?
Yep. So assessments, we will still give the NWA MAP as well as our common assessments. MAP, we're experienced with testing in person for that, so that will continue as usual. And for remote, NWA has released guidelines for doing the assessments remotely. So we feel confident that we'll be able to get those scores for both programs. And then also, you had a question, Christina, I think you had a question before the SPED question.
Just how we were gonna, you answered it. You said they were gonna have guidelines, the NWA was gonna have guidelines for our remote learners.
Yes.
And then the SPED question, the only other question was the SPED question about how we were just gonna maintain those clock hours on those hybrid students when they're off days. How are we gonna maintain their clock hours daily? How are we gonna make those clock hours up?
Yeah, Jackie, do you want to chime in on the SPED students?
Yes, for sure. So one of the things that we're going to have to look at is specifically at their IEPs and what their services look like. So if they are to be getting 60 minutes of reading a day as a intervention as part of their IEP, then we will have to look at those kids specifically, and the days that they're not there, we will have to look at how that looks virtually for those students. Teletherapy is something that has been utilized. I know this district did, my previous district did. It is going to be something that we're going to have to do some training for teachers and make sure they're prepared, but we do have to offer that to students so that we are meeting those needs.
Okay.
And then to answer your question before, you had about the one-on-one aides and the paraprofessionals too. So we're putting some thought into that. You know, looking at students and trying to figure out the reasoning they have those one-on-one assistants, and how is that going to look in a remote model. So is it that paraprofessional is checking in with a student, you know, on a daily basis? Maybe during some of that independent time, that would be the time that the para would access Zoom or Google Meets with the student to go over things. Again, we need to train that's part of our professional development plan, that we would train paraprofessionals on how to utilize those programs. They may not be comfortable with that, but that's something that we need to put into our plan, so that, again, those students are getting something extra and we are still following their IEP as closely as we can. And then the same thing with the hybrid model. The off days would be days that the para would then be able to check in with that student, kind of the same thing, you know, the same way of looking at it, checking in, helping with assignments and things like that.
Thank you so much for answering that question.
Sure.
Dana, will we have, I know it says that we're going to hire more permanent subs. how are you handling, because I'm thinking about like even an online teacher that gets sick and needs a substitute. Are we training those subs? Are we going to provide that? There's a lot of different trainings that our classroom teachers are getting. How are we going to train our subs, permanent or not permanent?
Well, a lot of training. We'll bring them in ahead of time before school starts. And it won't be perfect. There's no way that we can replace hours of Canvas training that we've given to our teachers, but I think we can get them, the substitutes, up and running in a way that they can, at least maneuver in the software. And then it'll probably be a combination of all hands on deck and teaching partners and administrators, helping those classrooms. I mean, it will be an issue, truly, if we do have a COVID outbreak, whether it's in the student ranks or the adult ranks, and we lose substitutes because of that. I think that is a real contingency that we have to plan for, because you could easily see how, if you get a couple of people who get sick, now we've lost some teachers, we've lost some substitutes, and now we don't have enough people to run the building. So those are frankly contingencies that keep me up at night. All this other stuff, we have an answer for ACE, and lunch will be tricky, but we can figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's an easy answer for what if a quarter of the adults get sick.
Okay.
I think those will be really peculiar situations that I'm hoping we can avoid, but realistically, we should plan for.
Okay.
Well, I'm also, as a question that could have been a precursor to Carolyn's question is, I mean, historically, we just have had a severe shortage of substitute teachers. So I'm wondering, is there, I've started to see like ads all over the place for people to register or become certified and be a sub. Do you know what's happening on that front? Because honestly, I mean, all of the school districts in the south suburbs will be pulling from the same pool, and there's been a shortage from the start. So do you know anything that's going on in that space to try and get more folks interested in becoming a certified sub?
Well, I think that everyone is advertising. We actually might be a little bit better off for a negative reason, unfortunately, but
you need the board. Do we need to become certified? So
by all means, we'll get you in a classroom.
Come on, Cam.
But realistically, I think our sub pool will be better this year, and that is a reflection of the job market. I think there will be more people at home who are willing to apply for and take those jobs. And at some point, I think as the economy reopens, we will lose part of that pool. But at the end of the day, being a substitute teacher is a very challenging job. It doesn't pay incredibly well. The people who do it typically like the flexibility and the lack of maybe daily commitment because of other things that are happening in their lives. So I think we'll just have to keep building up our pool as much as possible. And moving forward, we did increase our pay rates last year, if you remember, and we did have an escalator in there for not continual service, but the amount of service. So after they've hit so many days, if they've stuck with us, then their daily rate can go up as well. So I think that'll help. But everyone will be in the same boat on the substitute piece. And while I think the pool may be a little bit better because of more people available to be in it, I'm concerned just as the substitutes look at the different options and the risks that they may or may not want to take to work this fall.
Yeah. Just as a side note, because so many of our local colleges and universities will be remote, certainly those that have graduate programs, and Carolyn, I don't know if any of your students fall in this category, but that could be an untapped market. I mean, I know I have students in our graduate program who were certified teachers before they decided to go to grad school. So there could be this market of grad school students who are here who will be fully remote as well in their own studies, might be able to, who might be interested in studying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So while we're talking about hiring and subs, what about social workers? There's a section in this plan that kind of really clearly delineates our commitment to SEL, but also this idea that if you have concerns or your student has concerns that they can visit a social worker. Are we thinking about hiring more social workers? Do we have enough? Are we worried about there needing to be and more available to support kids differently?
I think we want to see how the numbers shake out. I mean, the issue with the remote kids is real. I mean, you know, when you look at Heather Hill School, you could have 100 kids in that school, right? I mean, that is a major drop in numbers, but it's just based on how the remote or the hybrid selection process kind of shakes out. And so I think we want to see, you know, just what that means as far as who's coming back and who isn't in person. And then we can kind of mess with those schedules and, as Jackie mentioned, scheduling the teletherapy with our current social workers and psychologists as well. So, you know, we could always use more, certainly. We just hired tonight an excellent one at Heather Hill School. So our ranks are complete. So we're looking forward to that. But really, we'll want to take the temperature when we get back. We know that we're going to do an SEL screener for all children just to try to get a baseline on how everyone is doing once we get back. And that's for hybrid and remote. So coming out of that, frankly, if we have more students in crisis than we anticipated, we may have to come back and potentially add either some additional staff members or maybe a vendor for some additional teletherapy.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
I would just, I'm sorry, Kim.
No, I was just say, can you just make it part of your maybe Friday updates or whatever the appropriate interval is?
Yeah.
Let us know what where we stand on these numbers as we get, especially as we get past this week and whatever that number of kids that is not responding to us is. I'd like to know what that is.
Absolutely.
And I mentioned ACE and K5. I want to put a bug in your ear for gifted and talented kids in our middle school. And I know we have advanced version of courses, but either remote or hybrid, especially on the remote days, you will have varying levels of motivation. And I worry about that population because they're often overlooked and in some cases even marginalized. I'm not saying that we do that, but I just want to put a bug in your ear as you're looking through the different strategies you're using and how you'll differentiate in classrooms to consider their needs too, and what it will take to really engage and support them in a way that causes them to continue to drive and move forward.
Sure, absolutely.
I know that you all tracked in the spring the number of students and families who just sort of dropped, just sort of disappeared. I mean, so I don't know what that percentage is or what it is, but I would be interested, I think we would be interested to know if, you know, if there's any special outreach that's going to happen with those families, especially if any of them fall in the current category of not having responded already. But I am concerned about those families who just sort of dropped off the radar. And this is not a 161 issue, it's an issue in every single district, especially, I know this was a big issue with the high school as well, but I'm concerned about what happens if those families select the remote option, and, you know, and how do we give them some special attention to make sure their student stays on track, the parents have support that we can provide. So you don't have to answer that today, but just something to think about, because I have been thinking about those families who just sort of dropped off.
Absolutely, for sure.
So for our new kindergartners and first graders who need, or any area who need a device, a Chromebook, you'll schedule some type of pickup for learners, something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. That's why I said, you know, some of the program protocols will look slightly different based on, you know, a remote kindergartner, first time with our district without a device, we'll have to have some in-person activity, but then that also could be depending on the situation, a meet your teacher sort of act, one-on-two, one-on-one sort of thing. And I think we can come up with some creative ways to kind of start those programs on the right foot.
Okay.
Quick question, and forgive me if this has been addressed. Have we looked into or considered webcams for classes with the hybrid, so that if you are doing a Monday, Tuesday, and you've forgotten, although you cannot necessarily hear back from your teacher in a live session during the day, that you can at least chime in to see what the other class is doing?
Well, the webcam is not the issue. It's just going to be a one-way process, right? Because again, that student would be able to observe, but the chiming in,
right?
There's no one to chime in to, essentially.
Yes, I understand, and I think that's probably best, but just for a couple reasons. But and again, I don't know the feasibility in terms of if this is something that would be a privacy issue with, we don't want access to our kids, or if this is something it would just be a technical nightmare. But just in terms of, if someone is, and even maybe this addresses the question earlier, if someone is a Wednesday, Thursday student, and they kind of want to get a preview of like what's happening in class, while they're working on assignments, just curious as to how viable that might be, useful that might be, or if it's just more trouble than it's worth.
So I'd actually bring it back to our conversation from the last board meeting, Steve, and I think you and I talked about this specifically, the difference in class sizes and the instructional strategies that we have to employ. I think because of that, I don't know that it would be incredibly valuable to beam into a class.
Right. Okay.
Realistically, if we have a hybrid class that starts at 18 kids and now we divide it in two, so now you've got two groups of 9, the amount of whole group instruction happening should be minimum.
Right.
And I think, as we look at the differences in programs, the value of the hybrid, absolutely. It's only 2 days in person, and then the 2 days are those alternate days. But you're talking about a situation where it's a 1-to-9 ratio, or even lower, depending on the grade level in the class. And so the amount of individual instruction that I think we will expect and that we will see with our students will be higher than the remote. So while the remote will have the consistency every day, right? They're hitting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Sure.
And that's part of that value. The value in the hybrid is that the really small class sizes will produce a lot of individualized teaching. And only from that aspect do I say it may not be the best, just to have the webcam up, because a kid may not know what they're talking about anyway.
Okay. All right. That answers the question. Thanks.
Hey, I got one question, and I may have missed it, but can you answer this for me? I know we talked about curriculum. I know we talked about a lot of stuff, and again, I think it's a lot of tremendous information being shared with the participants on the phone. I mean, on the cam. But have we discussed what we're doing about extracurricular, in particular, people like with band and chorus and basketball and any of that kind of stuff?
We are following all of the guidelines, and as I have shared, extracurriculars will be few and far between, if not outright non-existent. I don't think, as I'm reading the guidelines, basketball, for example, I don't think basketball even gets off the ground this year because of the physical contact issues that are present. So I think, the band, orchestra, those guidelines are tough. And Dave mentioned earlier the possibility of having some things outside. I think we should probably look to maximize that. But, the kids are going to have two choices. Obviously, socially distance, have your mask on and sing, or try to socially distance and give them an instrument that collects spit and vapor that could be dumped out. knowing that we have a respiratory illness that we're fighting. So unfortunately, we are going to have to be very creative with a lot of those extracurriculars. The guidance will take care of a lot of them, and that will just wipe them out before we even start. But for the others that we can pursue, as many activities that we can provide for kids outside of the school day, we will absolutely do that, because I think it would be a great outlet for the kids. I'm just, as we work through the guidance, I'm not hopeful that we'll have very many of those opportunities.
I could just add, we have started to brainstorm ways that we can still provide the band and orchestra lessons remotely, so the teachers can do it remotely, the students can participate at home with their instrument. So we're thinking through some different options for that, so that there's still an opportunity there, and that we can do it safely.
That's a great case. I'm sorry, Steve. I think that's a great case for where a visual, like if you end up doing band and orchestra, a visual for parents, this is where kids will be sitting, like to ensure that all the precautions are being exercised, just to give parents, especially since they won't be, there's no open house, right? Yeah. So parents who are new to our district, for example, who will have never been in that building, will have no idea what it means for their kid to take orchestra. So what does that look like? So I think this is another example of a visual. I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I realize I'm getting into the engineer brain trust on our board. Do we have a coding club, or things that we, this is our environment, and like, okay, well, what can we do that would be great to do remotely or online? Have we explored any?
I would ask if we could have some room to start school, and then we'll be more than happy to come back on.
Yes, that's fine.
Extracurriculars and those pieces.
Sure.
So Dana, for remote classes like art, are you thinking about sending any materials home to the remote kids for any type of anything that could be replicated? I'm thinking about all of the things in my home from Mr. Marty's class that all my kids have done, the coasters, the clocks, yeah. And I know that they can't cut wood at home, and you don't have digital printers, but I'm thinking about Mr. Gurmarad. And is there any opportunity at all to send kids home with the remote kids, or no?
We'll have to figure a different process out, because okay. Even if you think about Mr. Gurmarad's class at Parker now, a lot of that is really close group work, and so even for the hybrid kids, that's going to look dramatically different. Same thing with all of our STEAM experiences. And so what we'll need are specialists and teachers in those special programs to determine is, what's going to be the focus. Obviously music, becomes a lot of music theory, which, for many third graders, that's not their favorite, but unfortunately that may be what's necessary. And for the STEAM programs, we'll have to determine what we can reliably send home and the students can work on. Same thing for art.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, we'll want to, we know that the programs will be different, but the question is, how can we modify them so we generate the most consistency and the best experiences for those kids?
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I had to turn my stove off. I'm trying to multitask. So I'm looking at this schedule, and I'm seeing that those hybrid students are getting the art and the PE infiltrated in the day. Is that correct? That's being snuck in, right?
Yes.
And then,
depending on the grade level, yeah.
Okay, and then for on Fridays, it looks like it says live remote learning. That's where some specials will take place. Is that live remote learning for the hybrid or for the remote learners?
Everybody.
For everybody.
Correct.
I'm just wondering, and no, I'm not asking to, change the days or the schedules, but and it probably would be a bus situation. Like, if we're truly working on core classes and getting the students those core classes, and all the students would be home learning on Fridays, could we save some time during the school day and move all of our specials to a Friday when they would be home? Which, does that make sense? Because I'm wondering STEAM, like STEAM is an actual, class period. So how are we gonna get these kinds of, and I know I applaud, I can't, we're all trying to wrap our brain around this, and I can't imagine the task. This I just can't, like, this is a lot for everybody. I'm trying to put this into perspective. Do you get where I'm moving with that?
Yeah, I think that's a thought, certainly. And, you will notice, obviously, on Friday, we put some more specials and interventions and things of that nature. I think we run out of time potentially pushing too much stuff to Fridays, because we have to capture X number of minutes per week per teacher for plan time. And that plan time comes from the specials in those courses. So, I wouldn't get too hung up on the specifics of these schedules, because these are subject to change based on the numbers. We might be able to do a little bit better depending on how the hybrid versus remote numbers shake out. So once we, really by next Monday, we should have a schedule that in theory could work. Not that these don't work, but we'll actually have numbers of students behind them to say, yes, here's what Heather Hill could look like if we wanted to open school tomorrow. So hopefully once you see that, Christina, your comments on the specials may kind of fall into place a little bit more. Because you're right, we want to preserve as much instructional time when we have those kids in person as possible.
Does the fact that we're exclusively remote on Friday impact our bus contract at all? Because we don't need buses on Friday.
Yeah, we could talk to them. Obviously, in theory, we're saving a fifth. Fran, would you mind putting that on your to-do list too?
Yeah, I have to talk to the bus company anyway. I'm honestly not sure how that's going to work. Our contract with them is technically by the route. That's how they bill us. So my initial reaction is no, I don't think it will. If anything, I think it may save us some money this year. But I've been waiting again to see where the numbers fall, because depending on where the numbers fall and where the students live, I'm not even sure how many buses in completion I'll need this year. So that's all still in flux.
Yeah, so to Carolyn's point, the answer is probably yes. We will see a change in our transportation costs because with the decreased number of students riding it, the question will be how much.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
So I think obviously there's still a lot of details that you are working out, both on the public health, public safety side in terms of logistics, but also just on the curriculum pieces as well. And so I don't know if the next version of this document that we will see will be another draft or something that you will be considering your final version, but you can let us know. I would personally be okay with looking at another draft.
Oh, sure.
Or you are ready to sign your name in blood.
That's right.
But the other last piece I wanted to just mention, and I'm not expecting a response, but just something to add to your list and bring back to the community is what additional support can we try and offer parents who who are doing hybrid or remote, but need additional support, right? So I know Park District is on our list, and I know the Park District is working on something. I don't know what that something is. I know other churches and other groups in the community are also trying to think about how they can provide support for parents on those remote days. And so it would be great if we are able to provide the community with a list of, here's what the Park District is doing. Here is what this organization is doing here, and I know they're on your list to talk to this week, but in the past week or so, the outreach that I have received from organizations wanting to help us figure out, like, this is a community, let's have a community solution to this, right? How can we step up? How can we help? What can we do? How can we partner? And so I think parents will need a lot of help, even those who will also be working remote full time will need that. I know that families are thinking about, small pods of kids that maybe they can have their kids working with on those remote days in a safe distance type of way. But so families are getting creative, but I think any additional resources that we can provide information on will be extremely helpful.
Absolutely. And yeah, we'll add another section in this document just for that. I think it's a great idea.
Hey, Dana, do you think that your team would be able to survey parents, but teachers too, I don't know, after 3-4 weeks? I'm worried a little bit about our teachers, and I will be very eager to hear from them how it's going kind of soon, just in the event that we need more coaches or more support, or so I don't know how soon you'll find it to be appropriate, but
Sure.
I want to know how parents are doing as well. But I'll really want to know how teachers are feeling, just about the whole thing, what we're expecting them to do, facilitate instruction, keep kids safe, like all of these additional things that we're adding to them.
Sure.
I want to know that.
Okay.
Maybe there's an opportunity on those Fridays to actually spend some of that Friday focusing just on emotional support for teachers, or any type of support that teachers might need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe there's some time on that Friday.
That's kind of why I suggested, like, maybe if we had specials that day, teachers could have like a chill moment to just come back down,
Except the teachers that would be teaching specials.
Right. Yeah.
True, but would they be put into other positions during the week that they could be helping in the building? So, I mean, like, hey, now's your time to shine, specials. You know what I mean? Like this is your day. Not that they'd be working one day a week, but do you understand? Like that could they be positioned somewhere else?
I think though, Carolyn, to your point, Dana, maybe if you could, maybe this is something is Eric still on?
Eric is still on.
I see you.
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, so maybe this is something you can think about as well, like what types of additional support, like we think about additional caseworker support for our students, but what are we also doing for our teachers? And
yeah,
so
that's my concern.
like, yeah, I mean, but maybe if some thought could be given to that and brought back to us, but we do want to make sure that their mental and physical health is a part of our regular menu of things that we know you're checking on as well.
Absolutely.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so are there any other burning questions or comments that folks have? I know you have a whole new set of questions, the Q&A, Dana, I know that you're working on out to the community. I'm really hoping that parents feel like they have enough information at this point to make an informed decision. And, there is no perfect, you don't have any perfect options. So your decision won't be perfect, but whatever decision you make, we are committed as a district to support you 100% and do our absolute best to give your student and your child everything that they need to be successful. So, and I'm sure even us on the board, we're probably all doing different things as well, right? I mean, if you see me at Western peeking into a window trying to just get a peek of my child, then you will know why. So, or any of the schools, get a glimpse to make sure, kids are okay, but it's just a scary time. Sure. So I think if we have any additional feedback or thoughts And we can get them to Dana sooner rather than later so that he can work on addressing those questions by Friday.
Be great.
That would be helpful. And so, until then, I think we'll look forward to the next draft of this. And if it's not a full draft, if they're like just pieces of it you feel like you want to bring back to us and have a conversation about, I think that's also fine.
Great. Okay.
All right. I don't think there's anything left on the discussion items. We do have something that we need to go to exec session for. Do we still need to do that?
Yes, should take just a couple of minutes, and we don't have any action items afterwards.
Okay. Are you ready to set us up to move?
I am.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank everybody who joined us this evening. I need a motion to adjourn and move to exec session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. It is 6:53 and we will be moving into another room for exec session.
Awesome.